personality profiles can help an individual to know and understand themselves better, particularly in relationship to the world around them and to other people. That may be in a family, maybe in a work context, or it may be simply in relationship to God and the world in which He's set us and our role within that world. Well, one of the best known personality profiles is the Myers-Briggs, properly known as Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI. And like many of those, this is a questionnaire-based thing that helps us get a picture of the person that we are. Are we someone who likes to be very structured? Do we like to have lists? Do you find your energy by connecting with the world outside you, with people, events, things that are going on? Or do you find your energy from the world inside you? The idea behind Myers-Briggs is very much one of a preference. It's not saying you're this, therefore you're not that, or you're this, therefore you can't be that. But when you're at home in yourself, which would you tend to be? For example, we use it quite regularly in marriage preparation. We had a couple, one of whom was a very bubbly extrovert, and the other was someone who liked space. And they both had quite intensive, people-intensive day jobs. One was a nurse, one was a social worker. And they'd recently got married, and this girl wondered why her husband, when he came home, she had so much that she wanted to tell him. It was kind of overflowing. But he just wanted to go down to the shed at the bottom of the garden for a couple of hours. And she thought, what is this about? The Myers-Briggs helped to understand that he needed actually to replenish his energy, being an introvert, by some time to himself, and then he could engage more fully.
I think the strengths of personality profiling are that once you start to understand who you are and the way God made you to be, actually, I think we need to be ourselves, you start to recognise your strengths. You also recognise your potential weaknesses. I first had a profile done probably now about 8 years ago. I found it hugely helpful. I started to understand myself better. My family all did them, and we started to realise, where the areas of conflict were, how we could work together better. For example, I'm very low on the very practical, detailed aspect. And when I think back to leaving school, I went to work in an office and I was setting myself up for failure. I was very fortunate that everybody hated doing their stint on reception, and they all used to ask me to cover for them. And because I'm very people focused, I loved it and started to realise that was probably a better area of work for me as a junior. I particularly like Laurie Beth Jones' Path Elements profile because it uses earth, wind, fire and water, which to me are the building blocks of the universe. When you look at the qualities of those elements, they actually relate to the qualities in the people. The earth is very stable, fire is, blazes a trail, water very pastoral. And I find it helpful to do because it's so easy to remember and apply, and people get it instantly.
Personality profiles can help us to understand the way which we relate most fruitfully and naturally and deeply to God. To give an example, we may do Myers-Briggs and find that we have a strong tendency towards being a thinker. So that might point us in the direction of Bible study, someone who is an introvert. They are enriched by time spent on their own, or with one or two people, would find a silent retreat, perhaps a very natural way of developing their walk with God. An extrovert might find themselves naturally tending to prayer with other people. Someone who relates to the world in a very concrete and physical way through their senses, you may find it very helpful to express that in worship and prayer through a candle, through art, the visual image, maybe through what you're doing with your body as well, the way that you may be kneeling, standing, lying on your back in order to engage.
I think that personality types help people spiritually because once they recognise who God has made them to be, they only need to be that person, and God delights in them as who they are. And so in the prayer times, you probably have been around people who pray in particular ways, and sometimes we feel that we have to be stereotypical, but in personal prayer time, I think it's absolutely great to be completely who you are, and that God's written you and wired you to be that person. And I think it's just right to be authentically you when you're talking to Dad.